Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he crawled out from under the massive power conduit on level 7 of Kepler Station. The smell of burning circuits filled the air around him. Red emergency lights flashed in every direction. He looked. For 3 years he had worked as the chief maintenance engineer on this alien space station. He knew every pipe, every wire, and every computer system better than anyone else on board. The station was home to 10,000 beings from different worlds. Most of them were tall blue aliens called Zephyrians who ran the trading post. There were also small gray creatures called Vortex who handled the money. Big hairy aliens called Kragans loaded and unloaded the cargo ships. Jake was the only human on the entire station. Today everything was going wrong. A power surge had damaged the main computer systems 3 hours ago. Now the life support was failing. The artificial gravity kept cutting in and out. Half the lights had stopped working. Jake had been running from one emergency to another since the problem started. He grabbed his toolkit and rushed toward the central control room. His boots made loud sounds on the metal floors as he ran through the empty corridors. Most of the aliens had already gathered at the evacuation points. Captain Veltar had ordered all non-essential workers to prepare for emergency departure. Jake reached the control room and found Captain Veltar standing in front of the main display screen. The tall blue alien wore his formal military uniform. His forearms moved quickly across different control panels. 2 other Zephyrian officers stood beside him. They were talking in their own language in worried voices. "Captain, I can fix this," Jake said as he walked up to them. "Give me 6 more hours and I can get the main systems back online. The damage is not as bad as it looks." Captain Veltar turned to face Jake. His large yellow eyes showed no emotion. "Human Morrison, the Cascade. Failure has reached critical levels. We must evacuate immediately. The station will be uninhabitable within 72 hours. Jake shook his head. "That's not true, sir. I've been checking all the damaged systems. The main computer is hurt, but it can be repaired. The life support just needs some new parts from storage. I can route power around the damaged areas until we get everything fixed." "The evacuation has already begun," Captain Veltar said. His voice was cold and official. "Transport ships are loading passengers now. Essential crew members only." "I'm essential crew," Jake said. "I'm the chief engineer. You need me to help fix this mess." The captain looked at the other officers. They whispered something in their alien language. Jake could not understand what they were saying, but he did not like the way they were looking at him. "Human Morrison," Captain Veltar said slowly. "There is limited space on the evacuation vessels. We must prioritize our own people first. Zephyrian crew members and citizens get first priority. Then our Vortec financial partners, then our Kragan workers." Jake felt his stomach drop. "What about me? I've worked here for 3 years. I've saved this station more times than I can count. Where do I fit in your priority list?" "You do not," Captain Veltar said without any feeling in his voice. "There is no room for you on the escape ships." Jake stared at the alien captain. He could not believe what he was hearing. "You're going to leave me here to die?" "The station is doomed. Human Morrison. Nothing can save it now. We regret this situation, but we must think of our own survival first." "This is insane," Jake said. His voice was getting louder. "I can fix this place. You're panicking for no reason. Give me a chance to prove it." "The decision has been made," Captain Veltar said. "The last transport leaves in 1 hour. We suggest you use this time to make peace with your situation." Jake wanted to grab the alien captain and shake him. Instead, he forced himself to stay calm. "At least let me send a message to Earth. Let my family know what happened to me." "The communication systems are damaged," one of the other officers said. "No outgoing messages are possible." Jake realized they were lying. The communication array was on a separate power grid. He had checked it himself an hour ago. It was working fine. They just did not want him to tell anyone how they had abandoned him. "I see," Jake said quietly. "So you're just going to leave me here with no way to call for help?" "We are sorry, Human Morrison," Captain Veltar said. But his voice showed he was not sorry at all. "Your service to this station has been adequate." Adequate. 3 years of keeping their station running, and they called his work adequate. Jake, had saved their lives dozens of times. He had worked double shifts when their alien engineers could not figure out problems. He had created new solutions when their old methods failed. And now they were throwing him away like garbage. The 3 alien officers walked past Jake toward the exit. They did not look back. Jake stood alone in the control room watching the red warning lights flash on every screen. The computer system kept making soft beeping sounds as more and more problems appeared. Jake walked to the big window that looked out into space. He could see the evacuation ships leaving the station. Small transport vessels carried aliens away from what they thought was certain death. The ships looked like tiny lights moving away into the darkness. In less than an hour, every alien on the station would be gone. Jake would be completely alone on a massive structure that was slowly dying around him. The life support would fail. The power would go out. The artificial gravity would stop working. Then the station would become a cold tomb floating in empty space. But Jake Morrison was not ready to die. He had been abandoned and betrayed by the people he had served faithfully. They had decided his life was worth less than theirs. They were wrong about many things. They were wrong about the station being doomed. They were wrong about him being just adequate. And they were very wrong about leaving him behind. Jake pulled out his portable computer and started reviewing the station schematics. If he was going to survive this, he needed to understand exactly what was damaged and what could be fixed. The aliens had given up too quickly. They did not understand human determination. They were about to learn that abandoning a human engineer was the biggest mistake they could make. The last evacuation ship disappeared into the distance. Jake was now completely alone on Kepler Station. But he was not afraid. He was angry. And angry humans were capable of amazing things. Jake stood in the empty control room listening to the silence. For the first time in 3 years, Kepler Station was completely quiet. No alien voices in the corridors, no footsteps on the metal floors, no sounds of normal station life. Just the low hum of failing machinery and the soft beeping of warning alarms. He looked at his watch. The aliens had been gone for 2 hours. According to their calculations, he had 70 hours left before the station became unlivable. Jake planned to prove them wrong. The first problem was immediate. The life support system was running at 12% efficiency. The air recyclers were struggling to clean the atmosphere for 10,000 people, even though only 1 person remained. The heating system was failing in half the station. The artificial gravity generator was making strange noises that meant trouble. Jake grabbed his emergency toolkit and headed for the life support control center. The room was located deep in the station core where the most important systems were housed. As he walked through the empty corridors, emergency lights cast weird shadows on the walls. Some sections were completely dark. Others flickered on and off as the power grid struggled to maintain basic functions. The life support center was a mess. Broken circuit boards lay scattered on the floor. Smoke still rose from damaged computer terminals. Warning lights flashed red on every control panel. The main display screen showed system failures throughout the entire network. Jake sat down at the central control station and started typing commands. His fingers moved quickly across the alien keyboard. He had learned their computer language during his first year on the station. Now he was grateful for that knowledge. The first thing he discovered made him angry. The cascade failure was not as bad as the aliens had thought. They had panicked when they saw multiple system warnings. But Jake could see the real problem. A power surge had damaged the main control computer. This made all the other systems think they were failing even when they were working fine. It was like a person having a stroke. The brain was damaged so it could not control the body properly, but the body itself was mostly healthy. Jake just needed to bypass the damaged brain and give the systems new instructions. He spent the next 6 hours rerouting power from non-essential areas. The alien shops and restaurants did not need electricity anymore. The entertainment centers could stay dark. The guest quarters for visiting aliens could be shut down. All of that power could go to life support instead. By the end of his first day alone, Jake had stabilized the air recycling system. The station was now maintaining breathable atmosphere for 1 person instead of trying to supply 10,000. The heating system was working in the areas where Jake needed to live and work. The artificial gravity was steady again. But this was just the beginning. Jake needed to do much more than survive. He needed to fix everything the aliens had broken through their panic and poor decisions. On his second day, Jake started a complete assessment of all station systems. He created detailed lists of what was working, what was damaged, and what could be repaired. The aliens had been wrong about almost everything. Their rushed evacuation had caused more damage than the original power surge. The main computer could be fixed by replacing 3 damaged circuit boards. Jake found the spare parts in the engineering storage area. The aliens had these parts all along but had been too panicked to use them properly. The power distribution network needed some rewiring, but nothing too complicated. Jake had done similar repairs many times before. The alien engineers always called him when they could not figure out electrical problems. Now he was glad he had learned their systems so well. The docking bay controls were completely functional. The aliens had shut them down during their evacuation, but there was no real damage. Jake could reactivate them anytime he wanted. This meant ships could still dock at the station if needed. The communication array was working perfectly. The aliens had lied when they said it was damaged. Jake tested it on his 3rd day and was able to send signals to nearby star systems. He chose not to call for help yet. He had something to prove first. By the end of his first week alone, Jake had restored basic power to 60% of the station. The life support was running at full efficiency for his needs. The main computer was partially repaired and getting better every day. The aliens had expected their station to be dead by now. Instead, it was healing under Jake's care. But Jake was not satisfied with just fixing things. He started to see opportunities for improvement. The alien engineers had built systems that worked but were not very smart. They used rigid designs that broke easily when something went wrong. Human engineers thought differently. They built systems that could adapt and survive damage. Jake began modifying the power grid to be more flexible. Instead of having single pathways for electricity, he created multiple routes. If one path was damaged, the power could automatically find another way to reach its destination. This was basic human engineering, but the aliens had never thought of it. He also started building redundant systems. The aliens had one air recycler for each section of the station. If it broke, that section would lose breathable air. Jake built backup recyclers using spare parts from storage. Now each section had 2 or 3 systems working together. The aliens had designed their station like a house of cards. If one piece failed, everything collapsed. Jake was rebuilding it like a spider web. If part of the web was damaged, the rest would still hold together. 3 weeks after being abandoned, Jake had accomplished something amazing. Not only was he alive, but the station was running better than it had in months. Systems that used to fail regularly were now rock solid. Areas that used to have power problems now had steady electricity. Jake stood in the observation deck looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the aliens who had abandoned him were probably telling stories about their narrow escape from the doomed Kepler station. They thought they were heroes who had saved their people from certain death. They had no idea that the station they left behind was not dying. It was growing stronger every day under the care of the human engineer they had thrown away. Jake smiled as he watched a distant star twinkle in the darkness. The aliens had made the biggest mistake of their lives when they decided to leave him behind. Soon they would understand just how wrong they had been. 3 months had passed since the aliens abandoned Jake on Kepler Station. What started as a fight for survival had become something much bigger. Jake was no longer just fixing broken systems. He was rebuilding the entire station according to human engineering principles. Every morning Jake woke up in the captain's quarters. He had moved there after the first month when it became clear he was not going anywhere. The fancy alien furniture was too big for him, but the view of space was incredible. He would stand at the huge window drinking coffee and planning his work for the day. The station was now running at 110% of its original efficiency. But Jake was not satisfied. He had bigger plans. The aliens had always rejected his suggestions for improvements. They said human ideas were too risky or too expensive. Now Jake had unlimited time and resources to prove them wrong. His first major project was redesigning the power distribution system. The original alien design used a centralized network with one main control center. If that center was damaged, the entire station would lose power. Jake thought this was incredibly stupid. He spent 2 weeks building a distributed power network. Instead of one control center, he created 12 smaller ones throughout the station. Each center could operate independently or work together with the others. If half of them were destroyed, the remaining centers would automatically take over their functions. The new system was self-healing. When a power line was damaged, the network would detect the problem within seconds and reroute electricity through other pathways. The station could now survive massive damage and keep running without any human intervention. Jake's second project was the life support system. The aliens had built separate air recyclers for each section of the station. This worked fine during normal operations but created problems during emergencies. If one recycler failed, that entire section would become dangerous to live in. Jake connected all the air recyclers into one integrated network. Now the station had a single atmosphere that was constantly cleaned and refreshed throughout every corridor and room. If several recyclers were damaged, the remaining ones would work harder to compensate. The system could lose half its components and still maintain breathable air for thousands of people. But Jake's most ambitious project was building automated repair drones. The aliens had always used living workers to fix problems around the station. This was dangerous and inefficient. Workers could get hurt in toxic areas or during emergencies. They needed sleep and food and could only work limited hours. Jake designed small robotic drones that could work continuously without breaks. He built them using spare parts from the station's manufacturing center. The drones were equipped with tools, sensors, and basic artificial intelligence. They could diagnose problems, order replacement parts, and perform repairs without any supervision. The first generation of drones was simple. They could change light bulbs, replace damaged circuits, and clean air vents. But Jake kept improving their design. The third generation could weld broken pipes, reprogram computer systems, and even build new equipment when needed. Within 2 months, Jake had a fleet of 50 repair drones working throughout the station. They moved through the corridors like mechanical insects, constantly maintaining and improving everything they encountered. Problems were fixed before they became serious. Worn parts were replaced before they failed. The aliens would have been amazed to see their station now. Corridors that used to have flickering lights now had perfect illumination. Rooms that used to have temperature problems now maintained ideal conditions. Systems that used to break down regularly now ran smoothly, for weeks without any issues. But Jake was not finished. He had always wanted to upgrade the station's defensive capabilities. The original design had powerful shield generators that could protect against asteroid impacts and energy weapons. But the shields were inflexible. They either worked at full power or not at all. Jake spent 3 weeks designing adaptive barrier technology. His new shields could redistribute energy based on the type of threat they faced. If an asteroid was approaching from one direction, the shields would concentrate extra power in that area, while reducing protection elsewhere. If multiple small objects were detected, the shields would spread their energy evenly across all surfaces. The adaptive shields were 3 times more efficient than the original design. They used less power while providing better protection. They could also learn from experience. Each time they encountered a new type of threat, they would remember the best defensive strategy for future use. Jake also improved the station's manufacturing capabilities. The aliens had used their industrial fabricators to make basic replacement parts and simple tools. Jake programmed them to create advanced materials that did not exist in any alien database. He developed new metal alloys that were stronger and lighter than anything the aliens had ever seen. He created flexible plastics that could bend without breaking and return to their original shape. He synthesized crystals that could store enormous amounts of energy in tiny spaces. These new materials were used throughout Jake's reconstruction projects. Support beams made from his advanced alloys could hold 10 times more weight than the original alien structures. Power cables made from his improved plastics could carry electricity more efficiently and resist damage from heat or cold. By his 4th month alone, Jake had transformed Kepler Station into something completely different from what the aliens had built. It was stronger, smarter, and more efficient in every way. Systems that had been separate now worked together seamlessly. Technologies that had been limited by alien thinking now performed beyond their original capabilities. Jake stood in the renovated control center, looking at displays that showed the status of every system on the station. Everything was green. Everything was perfect. The aliens had built a functional trading post. Jake had turned it into a technological masterpiece. He activated the communication array and sent a brief message to the nearest Zephyrian outpost. The message contained only basic information about the station's current status. Jake did not mention the improvements he had made. He wanted that to be a surprise. The message would take 2 weeks to reach its destination, and another week for a response to come back. Jake used that time to put finishing touches on his projects and prepare for visitors. He had a feeling the aliens would be very interested in seeing their abandoned station again. Jake smiled as he walked through corridors that hummed with efficient energy. The aliens had made a terrible mistake when they left him behind. They had thrown away the one person who could make their station better than they ever imagined. Soon they would return and see exactly what human engineering could accomplish when given the freedom to work without alien limitations. The Zephyrian fleet appeared on Jake's sensors exactly 3 weeks after he sent his message. 5 ships approached Kepler Station in a defensive formation. Jake watched them through the main display screen in his control center. He recognized the lead vessel as Captain Veltar's command ship. Jake had been preparing for this moment for days. He had cleaned himself up and put on his best work uniform. The station was running perfectly. Every system was optimized and every surface was spotless. His repair drones had worked around the clock to make sure everything looked impressive. The approaching ships slowed down as they got closer to the station. Jake could imagine the confusion on their bridges. Their sensors would be showing readings. That made no sense. Instead of finding a dead hulk floating in space, they were detecting a facility operating at maximum efficiency. Captain Veltar's voice came through the communication system. Unknown vessel occupying Kepler Station. Identify yourself immediately. You are trespassing on Zephyrian property. Jake smiled before pressing the reply button. This is Chief Engineer Jake Morrison. Welcome back to Kepler Station, Captain. I grant you permission to dock at Bay 7. The communication channel was silent for a long moment. Jake could picture the aliens staring at each other in shock. They had left him here to die 6 months ago. Finding him alive was probably the last thing they expected. Human Morrison, Captain Veltar's voice was carefully controlled. We were told this station was completely destroyed. How is it possible that you survived? The reports of this station's death were greatly exaggerated, Jake replied. As I told you before you abandoned me, the damage was not as serious as you thought. I've had plenty of time to make repairs. We did not abandon you, Captain Veltar said quickly. We were forced to evacuate due to critical system failures. There was no choice in the matter. Jake laughed. Of course, Captain, I'm sure that's what you wrote in your official report. Please dock your ships so we can discuss the current situation face to face. The 5 alien ships approached the station's docking bays. Jake watched them connect to the airlocks through his security cameras. He had programmed the docking systems to work perfectly. The alien pilots would not find any problems with the station's equipment. Captain Veltar was the first to board the station. He brought 4 officers with him and several armed guards. They moved cautiously through the corridors as if expecting an ambush. Jake met them in the main reception area near the docking bay. The aliens stopped and stared when they saw Jake. He looked healthy and confident. His uniform was clean and pressed. He carried himself like someone who was completely in control of his environment. Captain Veltar, Jake said with a polite nod. You look well. I trust your evacuation went smoothly. The alien captain's forearms moved nervously. His large yellow eyes studied Jake with obvious confusion. Human Morrison, how did you survive? Our calculations showed that life support would fail within 72 hours. Your calculations were wrong, Jake said simply. Your engineers panicked and made poor decisions. The station was damaged but not doomed. A few repairs and some creative thinking were all that was needed. Impossible, one of the other officers said. The cascade failure destroyed the main. Computer systems. The power grid was completely unstable. Half the life support network was offline. Jake gestured for them to follow him. Let me show you around. I think you'll find the station has changed quite a bit since your departure. He led them through corridors that gleamed with perfect lighting. The walls were clean and undamaged. The air was fresh and comfortable. Everything looked better than it had when the aliens were running the station. They reached the main control center, and the aliens gasped in amazement. The room was filled with new equipment that they did not recognize. Display screens showed system readings that were far beyond original specifications. Warning lights that used to flash constantly were now dark and quiet. These readings cannot be accurate, Captain Veltar said as he looked at the main display. The station is showing 130% efficiency. Our original design could never achieve these numbers. You're right, Jake agreed. Your original design was adequate but not optimal. I've made some improvements during my time here. Jake spent the next 2 hours giving them a tour of his modifications. He showed them the distributed power network that could survive massive damage. He demonstrated the integrated life support system that maintained perfect atmospheric conditions throughout the station. He introduced them to his repair drones that could fix problems automatically. The aliens became more and more amazed as the tour continued. Every system they examined was superior to their original design. Technologies they thought were impossible had been implemented using their own equipment and resources. How did you accomplish all of this? Captain Veltar asked. His voice was filled with disbelief. You are only one person. You had no assistance or additional supplies. I had something your engineers lacked, Jake replied. Time, motivation, and human ingenuity. You built this station to work adequately. I rebuilt it to work optimally. I reached the station's legal database center where Jake had prepared the documents he needed. He handed Captain Veltar a thick folder filled with official papers. What is this? The alien captain asked as he looked through the documents. Legal proof of ownership, Jake said calmly. According to interstellar salvage law, continuous occupation and improvement of an abandoned facility grants ownership rights to the occupant. I have been living here for 6 months. I have made substantial improvements to the property. The station now belongs to me. Captain Veltar's skin color changed from blue to purple, which Jake knew was a sign of extreme agitation in Zephyrians. This is ridiculous. Kepler Station is Zephyrian property. We built it, we operated it for 10 years. And then you abandoned it, Jake pointed out. You evacuated all personnel and left it to be destroyed. Under the law, that constitutes abandonment of property. Since I remained behind and prevented its destruction, ownership transfers to me. We did not abandon the station, Captain Veltar protested. We evacuated temporarily due to emergency conditions. Jake smiled. Your own evacuation records show that you expected the station to be completely uninhabitable within 3 days. You made no plans to return. You filed insurance claims for total loss of the facility. That meets the legal definition of abandonment. The alien captain looked at his officers for support, but they could only stare at the documents in shock. Everything Jake said was technically correct, according to the laws that governed this sector of space. So what happens now? Captain Veltar asked quietly. Now you decide whether you want to work for me, Jake replied. I'm willing to offer employment contracts to qualified personnel. The pay is fair and the working conditions are excellent. But understand that I am in charge now. This is my station and we operate by my rules. The aliens who had abandoned Jake to die now found themselves asking him for permission to work on the station they used to own. It was a complete reversal of power that none of them had expected. Jake looked at Captain Veltar with the same cold expression the alien had used 6 months ago. I'll give you some time to think about it. But remember, I have limited positions available. I'll prioritize the most qualified candidates first. 6 months later, Kepler Station had become the most successful trading post in the Outer Rim territories. Ships from dozens of different worlds lined up to dock at Jake's facility. The station that had once struggled to maintain basic operations now handled 3 times more traffic than its original design specifications. Jake stood in his private office overlooking the main cargo bay. Through the reinforced windows, he could see alien workers loading and unloading ships with perfect efficiency. Human supervisors worked alongside Zephyrian technicians and Kragan laborers. The old system of species-based hierarchy had been completely replaced by merit-based leadership. Captain Veltar knocked on the office door and entered when Jake gestured for him to come in. The former station commander now wore the uniform of a junior logistics coordinator. His pride had been damaged, but he had adapted to the new reality better than most of his fellow Zephyrians. "The morning reports, sir," Veltar said as he placed a data tablet on Jake's desk. "All docking schedules are on time. Cargo processing is ahead of projections. No mechanical problems to report." Jake reviewed the information quickly. Everything was running smoothly as usual. His automated systems and human management philosophy had created an environment where problems were solved before they became serious. "Thank you, Veltar," Jake said. "How are the new Andromedan traders working?" "Out? Very well, sir. They appreciate our transparent pricing and reliable schedules. They've already requested permanent docking rights for their monthly cargo runs." "Approved. Send them the standard partnership contracts." Veltar hesitated for a moment before speaking. Again, "Sir, I've been meaning to ask you something. Why did you allow us to return and work here? After what we did to you, most beings would have turned us away." Jake leaned back in his chair and looked at the alien who had once left him to die. "Because you're good at your job when you're not making decisions based on panic and prejudice. This station needs qualified workers. I care more about competence than I do about revenge. But surely you must hate us for abandoning you." "I was angry for a while," Jake admitted, "but hate is a waste of energy. I'd rather focus on building something better than dwelling on past mistakes." Veltar nodded slowly. "You are a better leader than I was, sir. I can see that now." After Veltar left, Jake returned to reviewing the station's daily operations. The transformation had been remarkable. Word of the rebuilt Kepler station had spread throughout the galaxy. Traders and diplomats came from hundreds of light years away to see what the human engineer had accomplished. But the station's success was about more than just superior technology. Jake had implemented policies that treated all species fairly and rewarded excellence regardless of origin. Workers earned promotions based on their skills and dedication rather than their race or political connections. The old Zephyrian system had been corrupt and inefficient. Important positions were given to friends and relatives instead of qualified candidates. Different species were paid different amounts for the same work. Humans and other non-Zephyrian workers were always treated as second-class citizens. Jake's new system was completely merit-based. The best workers got the best jobs and the highest pay. Species origin was irrelevant. What mattered was competence, reliability, and willingness to learn. This had attracted talented individuals from across the galaxy who wanted to work in an environment that valued their contributions. The station now employed workers from 47 different worlds. Humans made up about 20% of the workforce. Jake had recruited them from Earth colonies and trading ships passing through the sector. They brought human engineering expertise and management skills that complemented the technical knowledge of other species. Dr. Linda Hayes, a human physician from the Mars colonies, ran the medical center with unprecedented efficiency. Her staff included Zephyrian surgeons, Vortec pharmacists, and Kragan emergency responders. Under her leadership, the medical center had become the best facility in 3-star systems. Commander Ryan Foster, a former Earth military officer, supervised station security with a combination of human tactical knowledge and alien technology. His security teams were respected by traders and feared by criminals. Pirate attacks on ships near Kepler Station had dropped to almost zero. Engineer Patricia Coleman worked directly under Jake to maintain and improve the station's technical systems. She had been amazed by his innovations and quickly learned to apply human engineering principles to alien technology. Together, they had developed new improvements that other stations throughout the galaxy were trying to copy. Jake had also implemented an open-source policy for his technological innovations. Any species that was willing to share their own advances could receive detailed plans for his improvements. This had created a network of enhanced stations and ships throughout the sector that all benefited from human engineering principles. The Andromedans had been the first to adopt Jake's power distribution system. Their space habitats now used distributed networks that were nearly impossible to destroy completely. The Centaurians had implemented his life support modifications on their colony ships. The Rigelians had built repair drones based on his designs for their mining operations. In return, Jake had gained access to advanced alien technologies that he could study and improve. Andromedan gravity generators were now integrated into his artificial gravity system. Centaurian atmospheric processors enhanced his life support capabilities. Rigelian mineral extraction techniques were used in his manufacturing centers. The result was a technological revolution that was spreading across known space. Stations and ships that adopted human-inspired modifications became more efficient and reliable. Those that stuck to old methods found themselves unable to compete. Jake's communication console beeped with an incoming message from Earth. Admiral. Patricia Williams of the Earth Defense Force appeared on his screen. She was smiling with obvious pride. Jake, the Earth Council has voted to award you the Medal of Engineering Excellence for your work at Kepler Station. Your innovations have advanced human prestige throughout the galaxy. Thank you, Admiral, Jake replied. But I haven't done this for prestige. I just wanted to prove that human engineering could solve problems that others thought were impossible. Well, you've certainly done that. Every alien government in this sector is requesting human engineers for their projects now. You've opened up opportunities for our people that we never thought possible. After the call ended, Jake walked out, onto the main observation deck, where visitors often gathered to watch ships coming and going. A group of young alien students from a nearby academy were taking a tour of the station. Their teacher was explaining how human engineering had transformed the facility. The key innovation, the teacher was saying, was the human concept of redundancy and adaptability. Instead of building systems that worked perfectly under ideal conditions, the human engineer built systems that continued working even when conditions were far from ideal. One of the students raised a tentacled appendage. But teacher, why didn't our people think of these ideas first? We have been building space stations for thousands of years. Because, the teacher replied, sometimes it takes a different perspective to see solutions that have been hiding in plain sight. The humans brought fresh thinking to old problems. Jake smiled as he listened to the conversation. 6 months ago, he had been abandoned on a dying station and left to face certain death. Now he was running the most advanced trading post in the galaxy, and his innovations were changing how entire civilizations approached engineering. The aliens who had abandoned him now worked under his command and followed his leadership. They had learned that throwing away talented people based on their species was not just morally wrong, but also incredibly stupid. Human determination and ingenuity had turned their mistake into his triumph. As Jake watched the stars through the observation windows, he thought about how much his life had changed. He had been abandoned by people who considered him expendable. Instead of dying quietly, he had built something that proved human engineering was superior to anything the aliens had created. Captain Veltar approached him with another data tablet. Sir, we have 17 new requests for permanent trading partnerships. Should I schedule meetings with their representatives? Schedule them all, Jake said. And Veltar, make sure they understand that we treat everyone fairly here regardless of what species they are. Of course, sir. That is one of the things that makes this station so successful. Jake nodded and continued looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, other humans were probably facing discrimination and prejudice from alien civilizations that thought they were superior. But that was changing now. The galaxy was learning that humans were not just adequate. They were exceptional, and it had all started with one human engineer who refused to die quietly when he was abandoned.